Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to jump right into the comments. But by the way, before I do that, the Andrew Knizner element of all of this, I think only further serves to prove or to show that the route the Cardinals are on with this whole thing is insane. Because if you think back to after the season when they knew Yachty was retiring and they talked about the offseason and what that would look like, this was, I think, back at like the winter meetings or even further before, it might have been November at the GM meetings, where they basically were very upfront about saying, we need an everyday starting catcher. We don't have that guy in the org. And I didn't think Andrew Knizner was going to be an everyday catcher, but I thought they might go get a veteran or get a guy that they could have carry 60%, 65% of the load. Knizner would get a bump up and could finally have a more of an opportunity to show himself. Maybe he plays 35, 40% of the time, get it close to a 50-50 timeshare. That's kind of what I thought. And then you read the quotes, and it was very clear the Cardinals had no intention of doing that. They wanted to fill the position, and Knizner would be strictly a backup like he was to Yachty. I was like, okay, they have said all they need to say about what they think of Andrew Knizner, which I thought they're kind of throwing him under the bus a little bit, but I get it. The offense wasn't there last year. They felt like this was a legitimate need. They got to get somebody. And they wanted to get Sean Murphy. The Athletics said it's going to cost you this and this and this. And the Cardinals, instead of going, all right, what about this? It's as though they just walked away from the table and said, well, screw you guys. We've got this line in on Contreras. We're just going to go pay for our catcher. And they heard what they wanted to hear in that meeting, and that was that. But it's kind of crazy to think about. They didn't give Andrew Knizner the time of day at all before going after and diving headfirst into the catcher market. Like, they were so afraid of having Andrew Knizner be even 50% of their catcher situation for 2023, as if they, like, let's pretend they don't get Contreras and they don't get Sean Murphy and they just have to go sign a guy like a Tucker Barnhart. He goes to the Cubs, like a guy from that ilk, a guy from that bucket. And they probably split it 50-50. The Cardinals were so afraid of a situation like that. And I'm saying they were afraid, not because they said they were, but because their actions dictated that they were. They were so afraid that they literally, after finding out that the Oakland Athletics asking price was prohibitive, instead of going, well, we can just wait this out and see what happens, they literally jumped feet first and said, well, we're just going to have to pay Contreras. Doesn't matter what the price, doesn't matter. We got to get him because we don't want to be left in the cold without either one of these guys or without the catcher, one of the catchers from the Toronto Blue Jays, if we can't convince those guys to trade for a fair price. The Cardinals asked around to the Blue Jays and to the A's, and they were working on a trade for a catcher, and they didn't like what they heard as the asking price. And so they just said, all right, well, we have to get Contreras because he's the only big free agent name on the market. If we don't get him, we're screwed. That's the way they behaved in the offseason. They signed him. They didn't wait around for Sean Murphy to even be traded because they were afraid of losing the leverage at that point. It's Mozeliak not calling a bluff. And again, I'm saying all of this as an analysis of the catcher pursuit in the offseason, not as a criticism of Willson Contreras for the signing, because I think Willson Contreras, as he showed tonight, can still be a valuable player to the Cardinals. I think he can still be a valuable catcher to the Cardinals, by the way. But offensively, like you saw what he did tonight, you saw the energy that he brought to the table, huge, vitally important to what the Cardinals are doing. And I think he will continue to be. So that signing can end up being a good one. We're not doing the moratorium on the signing after 40 days. It's not going to be that kind of show. But I just think it's really interesting that you can look back at the pursuit of a catcher and know that they were in the trade markets. And yes, the reported asked whether it was Ken Rosenthal and Derek Gould have two differing views on this, whether it was Donovan and Nootbaar and Graceffo, or one of Donovan, Nootbaar plus Graceffo to get Sean Murphy. Those are kind of the reports that are out there. Either way, Cardinals didn't want to trade any of those guys, and I think for good reason. What a throw by Brendan Donovan tonight from left field. You can give him the utility man gold glove now. Just go ahead and give it to him for the second year in a row. He's just that good at all the different positions that he plays. I, for a time last year, was thinking this guy's not really an outfielder. I think they can put him out there, but I don't necessarily think you should be comfortable with it. I was wrong. He's just a ball player. He continues to make good plays no matter where you put him. Impressive stuff by Donovan, but that's why the Cardinals don't want to trade him, right? They love the on-base skills. They love the defensive skills and the utility that you can have with a guy like that. Didn't want to trade him. Didn't want to trade Nootbaar. He's the one guy that they said was going to be in our starting outfield going into the year. That was Ollie Marmol back in, November, December was saying those things. So you can understand why the Cardinals would balk at that additional asking price. But if you look at what the A's ultimately got for Sean Murphy, it's not anything close to the equivalent of Nootbaar, Donovan plus Graceffo. It's just not. I get Kyle Muller they end up with, and it was a 3-team trade, so it's a little bit complicated. Esteury Ruiz they come up with from the Milwaukee Brewers. It's like they didn't even get that guy from the Braves, where Sean Murphy ended up going, but the Braves sent Willson Contreras to Milwaukee, and so it all kind of balanced out a little bit. And Ruiz could be an interesting player. I don't think he's going to have any power, but if he gets on base even remotely close to enough, he could steal 75 bases and be like a unicorn in the game if he and plays good defense. But I still don't think that the return that the A's got was even close to what they were barking up the Cardinals tree to try and acquire. And so there was no calling a bluff to say, all right, we think this Gold Glove caliber catcher, who's also started off having a great offensive season with Atlanta, which you couldn't have predicted, but you knew he had a good bat attached to him as well, kind of the full package. Cardinals could have said, this is the guy that we want, but we don't think they're going to get anything close to what they're asking for from us, so we will wait. But they were worried that Contreras would then go and sign, and you'd lose out on both of them, or Contreras would sign and you'd feel compelled to overpay for Murphy. Mozeliak doesn't like to not have the leverage, and so he decides to, in that situation, get a jump on the market. Whether it costs the Cardinals remains to be seen, but the fact of the matter is they think it's a dire enough situation with Contreras right now. Whatever the smoking gun is that we don't know, they think it's serious enough to basically pull him for Andrew Knizner, the guy that they gave no due to whatsoever every single month since November until now. They were in spring training leaking out little comments about he might not make the roster. Trace Barrera, who's now the third catcher on the team, was maybe going to get it. Are you kidding me with that? That was never realistic, and I understood. And if you listen to B Shape Daily, if you've been around with me since before the season, you remember I was saying it then. It would have been ridiculous to not have Andrew Knizner on this team. When you think about all the things that have changed, new pitching coach, new hitting coach, new bench coach, no Yachty, who's the captain of that pitching staff behind the plate. And you're going to bring in Willson Contreras, who you have faith in. You think he can do a nice job. But you're going to have a completely green backup catcher that's not been with the Cardinals at the major league level at all as the partner in crime behind the plate to fill the 162 games and not go Andrew Knizner just because he's not hitting enough. You've lost the plot, man. You've jumped the shark on the whole the backup catcher needs to hit thing. It's not. I hope this whole situation shows that what I've been saying about this is accurate. That when people last week were talking about the Cardinals need to make a big shakeup right now, change out 4 or 5 guys from the roster, and I was one of those guys. I said they should shake up the roster before you even start thinking about firing a manager or anything like that, it's not going to happen. But at that point, people were including, change backup catchers. No. I said at the time that would have been insane. I think you're seeing the value the Cardinals, maybe it's by default because of whatever's going on with Contreras, but the value the Cardinals do place on the backup catcher position, having the wherewithal and the ability to handle the pitching staff. And Kiz has come up with a few nice swings at the plate. But he's going to bat ninth, but he's going to catch damn near every day until this Contreras thing gets resolved. And he should, because he's got the familiarity. It makes sense. They never were going to have it make sense to send him out, DFA, or even option him because you wanted more offense from the backup catcher spot. It would have made no sense whatsoever. And so hopefully everybody realizes that. I know it's fun to crap on Andrew Knizner when he's not hitting. I don't think people appreciate enough, and I've been saying this, I've been consistent on this. I don't think people appreciate enough what Andrew Knizner brings to the table for this team. I really don't. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the comments. So I had to get the Kiz stuff out because I feel like that is definitely related because it just even further exemplifies how wild the situation is. This is the guy that they went so far out of their way, right or wrong, they went so far out of their way to make sure Andrew Knizner was not the starting catcher or even half of a starting catcher duo that they would have signed, a $3-4 million veteran to split it with. They went so far out of their way on it. And now they're giving him the reins basically while they figure this out with Willson. They were so reluctant to give Andrew Knizner the opportunities, and now he's going to have them by default, and that's a choice that the team is making. So that further explains, I think, the divide and how really dire they feel this situation is.